steps. And 2 top.
Yes.
Alright, 2 steps.
And my husband.
2 steps.
What? This.
2
This is
steps.
spooky.
Jolt.
This is really spooky.
2 steps.
There's another chain to go over there. There's a chain to go over there.
2 steps. That's it. That's it. No. 2 steps. Right. 2 steps. Steve, do you want to talk about the lady who was spoiled down here?
Yeah, during the Blitz in 1940, there was an air raid. One of many of the air raids in the area. And there are a lot of people sheltering down here. There's one woman with a baby. The water main was fractured and this vault flooded. And the water was up to the lady's neck. Just at that moment, a lorry was going by with the Slade brother, who just recently heard the story of the Slade brothers who survived the Titanic by getting drunk in the pub and not going. They were working on the docks during the war, and they just happened to be driving by and they heard the lady screams. And they got the hook and the chain from their lorry, and they managed to get the lady out. But unfortunately, there were, I think it was 28 people were killed in that bombing raid because the houses and the hotels were above us.
And there was the school back as well. Some of them were school back, the children were school. So this what you're in now is only a fraction of what's here. We know it goes up along there. So this is about a sixth of what was under here. That's the bit we get into. But in many ways, some ways I suppose you could say it's a crime scene, isn't it? That's warfare. However, going back to the 1400s, we know that this is very, very posh. They took trouble to make the stone very, very fine, yes? The technical term for that is chamfered stone, sort of ground down. So they didn't just put any old stones in here. The arches look a bit ecclesiastical, like a church, don't they? So we think that this was not a wine vault, but we think this was probably a posh showroom, a posh shop. Like Harrods is to London. And they displayed lots of goods that came into the port in here, and the rich people living in their big homes and their castles around the country would send their servants down to Southampton and get to look at the samples of things, order what they wanted, and get it sent back up to wherever they lived. So it's some kind, possibly a very upmarket showroom. But we don't have any reference. And that theory I just told you was from the city archaeologist. That's what he says.
This is 1500s.
About 1400s. One of the later vaults.
And there were structures above this.
Yes, yeah. Now the thing about most of these vaults is they stay at a constant temperature. Even though this one wasn't for wine, most of them stay at the same temperature every day of the year. And that's important for wine. The vault stays at about 11 degrees, which is 52 Fahrenheit, thereabouts. Okay? So if I put you in here on the coldest day of the year, it will be fairly warm. The warmest day of the year, it will be fairly cool. The temperature here is very.
It's a bit difficult to see from there in the dark, but that's the buildings that are above us. Well, in fact, they were just slightly next door, they were destroyed in this. So the empty patch next door, that's where these hotels were.
Yes, all the vaults in Southampton were used in zero-edge shelters, where possible.
And that's the, oh sorry, still looking at me. And the other picture I was showing you is the castle water gate. You can see it's the medieval ruin, but before the Blitz it was covered in rendering. When it was damaged in the Blitz, they decided to clear off all the rendering and expose the original stone.
Now, interestingly, a lot of the rubble from Southampton that was so heavily damaged was put aboard big ships and taken to New York. And they were making Manhattan Drive at the time, and a lot of the rubble from Southampton ended up being hardcore for Manhattan Drive in New York. So the little bit of Southampton in New York.
What you described the bombing in 1940 has taken, I'll say, not only a substantial percentage of how we've been walking around. Is that because that period is seen in Southampton as a sort of a major historical event?
It is a major historical event because that changed totally the city. Those buildings that Steve just showed you all existed up to then, and a lot more of the medieval city existed. So what we have today is very much a rearranged place with a hodgepodge of different eras and styles. And a lot of the modern buildings are very pleasant to look at. So, and remember, it's still within living memory just about. There's quite a few people around who will have wartime memories. People of the late 70s and 80s that still remember as children all that going on. So it's still sort of quite current. There's certainly no animosity towards German people. That's a long time ago, when wartime's wartime. We've all moved on. In fact, interesting enough, in my life, in the 1960s, I was about 14, and I was sent in the mid-1960s to Germany on an exchange. And they had things called youth exchanges. And the whole idea was that the young people from one country went and met young people from another country, then you would get to know each other, and there'd be less chance of conflict and war in the future. And a true story, that was way back then. A year ago, the guy I stayed with in Hamburg, his Hamburg had similar bomb damage to Southampton. So that was a city we were tweeted with. His name was Dieter Müller. He found me on Facebook, looked me up. He was travelling in England and came to stay for a day. After about 48 years. Amazing. So, it's true, isn't it? Sort of, I'm part of that post-war generation where it was about building bridges, but certainly my parents' generation and some people still around will remember that. Well, not a bad way, we all have to know the lesson.
I was born in 1940
Right.
in Southampton, and I do remember the bomb damage.
You were
very young at the time.
Yes.
A lot of the places in the high street were right there, and I do remember.
You will remember, absolutely.
Yes,
yeah.
I do.
And it's and a little bit later, I can remember into the late 50s and certainly into the 60s, still seeing bomb sites everywhere.
Yes.
You can actually get a map of the bomb sites of Southampton, the bomb damage in all the buildings. So we had as much, people don't realise that Southampton took as much a hit as like the east of London was always cited, or other Coventry was taken off the map up to a point, wasn't it, as an industrial city. But certainly Southampton had very serious damage.
Over 600 killed, wasn't it?
Well, it was very low. It was 635, and it was very low because given the amount of bombing rates and the amount of damage, because people could take to these vaults, they were relatively safe. And a lot of the vaults were much more underground than this, and they were natural shelters. So I've actually seen statistics for, given the amount of bombs and the amount of deaths, were actually very low, by comparison to other places they didn't have these vaults, these medieval vaults to go into. So it's sort of save people as well. Southampton as a city nowadays is, like I said, about 240,000 people. It's changed dramatically in the last dozen years or so. 1 in 7 of our population is now Polish because of the opening of the borders from the European Union. So we've had a mass migration in there. In previous generations we've had Caribbean, people from Pakistan and India and so on. So it's a very multi-ethnic, diverse community in Southampton. I find it's a place where I was born and bred. I've actually moved away, lived all over, ended up coming back to where I started. And I like it a lot, actually. It's got a lot to offer. It's got all the things I need for a city this size. And it's a good travel point as well. I've got all the places here. So nowhere's perfect where we live in life, but you know, it meets my needs anyway, that's all I can say. It's got 2 universities. The academic one, if you like, is Southampton University. The one that's more vocational with practical subjects is Southampton University. And that's up and coming, especially in things like creative trades and media, that sort of stuff. A lot of people from there now going on making careers and significant names for themselves in those fields. Is there anything else that you want to know about Southampton we haven't covered? Just without boring you too much, go right back to the beginning, 2,000 years ago, roughly where they started, but the Romans came in. And the Romans settled over that way by a few miles on the banks of the River Regen. You know what I mean by Bishop Manor, that area. And there still are evidence of Roman dishes there to this day. It was a trading place for the Romans. And then we had, after the Romans left, about 400 AD, we had various tribes coming in, Saxons and Danes, and especially a tribe called the Jutes from present-day Jutland, which is like called in Germany. And then later on we had the Vikings coming in from Sweden, Denmark, Norway. And then we had in 1066 the Normans coming from northern France, the Northern invasion, and actually took over the throne of this country. And then we've never been invaded since, but lots of other people have come. So it's a very diverse country, isn't it, wherever you are. The traditional people that were here before 2,000 years ago were the ancient Celts, and they got pushed out to the extremities. They got pushed down to Cornwall, pushed out to the edge of Wales, pushed out to the islands of Scotland, pushed up to the north of Scotland. So that's the Celtic fringe. And there are still people there that have the characteristics of being Celtic looking, which is typically fairly short, maybe quite a fair complexion. The ginger hair was off to the side of Celtic ancestry, and so on. They got pushed out by and large but the Romans never went into Scotland. They didn't go that far into Wales. They colonised part of the country. So, you know, like a lot of places, it's fluid, isn't it, over time. Populations change, people interbreed, intermarry, all moves on. We'll just take up the road just to finish and show you where the bike is. Very there. And just one can stop the road, which is quite interesting.